your own face. That'd be sick.
No, that would be horrible. It would be horrible. See two of me on the screen at the same time? Oh my gosh.
I actually have that if you want it.
No, thank you, Brian.
That would be a blessing.
It's good to see you in the recital hall, Dr. Crain.
Yeah, I'm not there, obviously. I wish I was. I wish I was. This one time I do. I really wish I was there.
Yeah, we're never going to be so happy to go back into Durgan Hall. It'll be a wonderful moment.
Well, I go there quite often to work, and then there's like no one there. It's just dead. It's like
I literally haven't been there since March.
There's like no one. I don't even see the custodian. I know he's there. He's somewhere, but I don't ever see him. He just goes up in the 4th floor and hides.
Okay, so I think I've got the live stream up and running. So I guess we could get started, unless there are any objections. Okay, so welcome everybody. This is, I believe, our 5th installment of the Headphone series. And of course, as you all know, or many of you know, these Headphone series events were intended to be opportunities for us to replicate the concert going experience without having to put together some kind of an actual concert. But where we are here is that some Headphone series concerts have been collaborative between a number of people, or one person kind of doing the whole thing solo. And when we were brainstorming this idea up, I said to Dr. Crain and Dr. Telesco, hey, why don't we we love early music, we're all really into this stuff, so why don't we try to do one? And then we threw together a whole ton of ideas. we've between the three of us, we probably have about 7 times as much material as we could ever get through in the amount of time that we have here. But the fact is, we all three of us, we love early music. And just to clarify, when we're talking about early music, we're generally, or at least for our purposes today, we're talking about music of the medieval era, the Renaissance, and the Baroque era. And so you can consider it roughly 1750 and before, right? That definition changes all over the place, but that's where we are. And while the three of us, we love early music, I think it's safe to say we come at early music from different perspectives. I come at it from the vocal end of things, because that's kind of what I do. But Dr. Telesco has encountered other things. Dr. Crain has encountered other things, and it's and we're hoping that's kind of what one of these collaborative Headphone series events is all about, is different minds coming together and experiencing different styles and having a different perspective potentially. And now, just as much as we, the three of us, will have different perspectives potentially, we hope that you all bring your perspective into this event, right? Like one of the central things about this Headphone series is that you should feel free to chime in, right? You hear something, or we introduce something that maybe you've heard before or you haven't heard before, but then what's your reaction to it? That part of this experience is just as important as anything else. Your opinions are just as valid as anyone else's. Regardless of the, if you haven't spent years performing this stuff before, that's still okay, right? Like your reactions to this and the conversations that we can have are all very valid. So please, once, we'll probably, the way these tend to go is, we will introduce something, tell you a little bit about what it's about, what's going on. But then ideally after hearing it, please feel free to chime in, because that's what makes this successful and interesting. At least for me, I want to hear what you have to say. So A couple of reminders for these. Please make sure that you have either a good set of headphones on, or you're playing through speakers, because we want you to, always, obviously the audio settings in Zoom are not ideal. We've tried to optimize them as best we can, but in any way that you can, try to make the experience as you improve your own signal as much as possible, and have it getting to your ears as cleanly as possible. Okay. The other thing is that I have to go over here and find a link for you all for the recital credit. Those of you that need recital credit, I have a link to put in the chat. So if I don't do this now, I'll forget to do it. So this goes to everyone. Where's my everyone option? Everyone in meeting. There we go. And I'll make sure that I've let everybody into the room. There's nobody waiting in the waiting room. Okay, so here goes. That's for recital credit. You know the drill. Okay. Yeah, I think that's it. And so I think the first one to kick us off is going to be Dr. Crain, just kind of introducing this idea of what historically informed practice in early music is. So Dr. Crain.
Can I have you all turn your cameras on so I can see all your faces when I scroll through this? Thank you. It's nice to see some of you. I don't get to see a lot of you all the time, right? So now, every one of you, I think, that's here, pretty much all of you, you've all had me in class at some point. Yeah. So in some ways, whether you've realized it or not, you've been introduced through the things we study to historically informed performance practice. Okay. And you know that part of my mantra as a teacher, right, is to understand style, right? You're probably sick of, a lot of you, of hearing me say that. What does that mean when you talk about style? Well, that is part of historical informed performance practice. And believe it or not, this idea of performing on historic and period instruments and things like that, it's really a kind of a new thing. It really came about in the 1970s, maybe a little bit earlier, when people started to find these old instruments and pick them up and started to play them. And that kind of spawned this whole new thing out there. It wasn't commercially viable at first. Now it is much more. And you start to see many more groups who feature this and do this kind of stuff. And I think Dr. Richter is going to talk about that. And I think Dr. Telesco is going to talk a little bit about that. And I know that for myself, I don't really talk about myself in terms of my own kind of foundational musical experiences. But I remember in grad school, I went and saw a vocal group called the Hilliard Ensemble, led by Paul Hillier. And I heard them sing Periton Organum. You guys remember that? A lot of you from class. And then I heard them sing Josquin, and I heard them sing, and they sang in Pythagorean tuning. And to hear a group sing in that kind of pure tuning, as opposed to equal temperament tuning, live, is something that it's musically changing you. It changes you to hear something like that. And then along the way, right, my graduate studies took me to places that I could actually hear great lutenists like Paul Odette. I got to work with Paul Odette, who has basically recorded all the John Dowland tunes and things like that. And I got a chance to hear a very, very, very famous female singer by the name of Emma Kirkby. And she is kind of a powerhouse in this, and she's not doing too much later. And then, of course, I got to meet somebody by the name of Christopher Hogwood. And Christopher Hogwood, who's just recently passed away, he's just went away. He's one of these founding members, okay, of this early music kind of movement. So I know that Dr. Richter is going to talk a lot about singing, and so is Dr. Telesco. So I thought I'd take it from a different perspective. And a lot of you have already trained in this with me. You know the difference between the ho and the ba, right? The loud and the soft, not the mixing, the use of the consort and things like that. But I don't in class get a lot of chance to actually show you some of these things. So I dug through a lot of my video recordings that I have, and I found some real gems that were basically I converted from old tapes and made them digital. And they're from the 1970s, the late 1970s. So you're going to see some nice 1970s clothing and some nice 1970s hair, which honestly, some of you have basically the same hairstyles now as the late 1970s. I don't see much difference. So what I first thought I'd start was show you kind of the godfather of historically informed performance practice. And his name is David Monroe. Now, unfortunately, David Monroe committed suicide many, many years ago. But what he did was he established this whole thing going forward for instrumentalists and for vocalists. And really, everybody kind of stands on his work that he did, particularly with a group called the Ancient Academy of Music, who still record. They still have their own label. They do their own thing. They play all over the world. They've had different leaders. But I want you to watch him play a medieval shawm. Okay? So you guys can actually see this in action. I'll be honest with you, he received a lot of criticism in his life for how he actually played, because you swear sometimes when you watch him play, he sounds like John Coltrane playing. But that's okay, because it's historically informed practice is about possibility. And it necessarily doesn't mean that you play on old instruments. What it necessarily means is that you approach the music in a stylistically tasteful and appropriate way, based on evidence and models from the past. Okay? So let me share my screen and let me play you this little ditty by David Monroe so you guys can see this. Get to that. All right, so let me get back here. I just had to pull up the video, excuse me. Share my screen. All right, so you all should see my Windows Media Player, yes? You see David Monroe there? That's him on the screen there. Okay. All right, now remember, this is a pretty early recording. Now, do you all remember, some of you who have studied with me, what a shawm is and how a shawm is performed? Right? A shawm is really Middle Eastern in derivation. Functions in the same way as a kind of a double reed instrument. But remember, when you play a shawm, the entire reed is in your mouth. Okay, the entire reed is in your mouth. And then there's more like a trombone mouthpiece up against your lips that you create this kind of chamber of buzzing around that instrument. So here is David Monroe playing a medieval shawm. Now, I don't know how historically accurate that is in terms of actual the performance itself, but it gives you a good sense of the possibilities, right, with these instruments themselves. And of course, he looks like Dizzy Gillespie up there with the cheeks coming out there, right, overblowing on that. I mean, that's really intense. And of course, that's that loud instrument. And those long instruments behind it, those are called trumpet bucinas. Okay? And of course, eventually those things get bent back on themselves. And that's how we get to sackbuts and how we get to trumpets and all that kind of stuff. But that's where that beginning comes from. And he right there performing, he's the beginning of this. He launches this stylistically, right? This historically informed practice. But it's more than just instruments too, okay? And this kind of stuff. So if you guys recall in your studies with me, we talk about isorhythm a lot, yeah? Those of you in Music History 1, you're doing that right now. And we had talked about a very, very famous Ars Nova composer by the name of Guillaume Mété Michaud. Yeah. And I have you study, right, his Notre Dame Mass, okay, which is the first complete polyphonic setting of the ordinary, right? And it's significant that. Now, most recordings and most groups who perform that today, especially historically informed performers, perform in Pythagorean tuning. So Pythagorean tuning is it's purer. I don't know how, it's sweeter. It may be a better way to think of it. And what happens is when you get to those thirds are actually wider physically than equal temperament thirds. And those thirds pull you more towards those perfect sonorities, those fourth and fifths. And that's the advantage of Pythagorean tuning and singing that literature, is that you get that pull towards those perfect sonorities. So I thought what we'd do is we'd watch a group, just a little bit of the Kyrie movement performed in a church or in an abbey that would have been similar to what Michaud would have performed in his time. Because a lot of times with this historically informed performance, it's as much about the place and where it's performed as how it's being performed too. And there's no possible way, I'm sorry, I know some of you people are SRT folks, there's no possible way to replicate in a recording, right, some of the physical acoustic environments that you encounter from the Middle Ages. It just isn't, right, because of the kind of reverberation effect that goes on. So this is a group, I wanted to play something by the Hilliard Ensemble. There's nothing, I could play you the recording, we could listen to it, but I wanted you to actually see this as well. This is a group called the Gilles Binchois Ensemble. So I don't know if you guys recall this, probably not. Binchois was Dufay's student. It was Dufay's student. Some of you will recognize that name, Dufay, Guillaume Dufay, the Burgundian composer of the early Renaissance. So this ensemble was founded on his music, and then it's expanded out. But I want you just to hear a little bit of the Kyrie, and then I'll give way to my colleagues so they can talk a little bit more. And you can actually see this thing because it's basically one person per part. It's one person per part. It's not a large choir at all. All right, so let me get that one up. And I won't play any more funky, crazy David Monroe stuff, although I've got a lot of it. All right, so let me get back to Zoom here. All right, so this is an abbey in northern France, and this is a place where actually Michaud worked. Okay, so, and this is the Binchois ensemble singing. And let me get to 616, where the Kyrie starts. And for some of you who have had me in class, you know that the Kyrie movement from this mass, the bottom two lines are isorhythmic, okay? So here's the Kyrie, or just a little bit of it so you guys can hear it. All right, so that was the end of the introit, right? The introduction. So now they're going to switch up, and now they'll rearrange for this Kyrie. And this is Pythagorean tuning that you're hearing, not equal temperament. That's pretty amazing, isn't it? To hear those kind of sweet sonorities. Did you all notice how that when they would go towards those cadential points, how it was even more intense when they finally sat on those perfect consonances, right? That's informed performance, right? Is understanding stylistic worldly where it goes. And these folks are masters at it. They're really good at it. But it's one possibility. Okay? It's one possibility. There's no right or wrong. It's just showing what you can possibly do with some of this older music. And it's really limitless, right, into the 21st century, what you can do. But what what blows me away whenever I hear performances like this is it's one person per part. And when you hear that, does that sound like it's just 4 people singing? To me, it doesn't. Now, it has to do with the acoustics of the place as well, but it's just phenomenally good musicianship and understanding where this stuff comes from. That's what it means to be historically informed, right? This is a good example of that. And there are many, many other examples, okay? I could talk for hours and hours, as you guys know, about this kind of stuff. But I need to turn it over now and let somebody else talk.
I think that's fantastic. I mean, this is so beautiful. And that Pythagorean tuning, it makes everything sound like a perfect interval.
It does, and that's one
Fox.
possibility. There's also the Kierenberger tuning. There's the Werkmeister tuning. There's mean tone temperament.
Yeah.
I mean, and then of course, then you get into the Baroque. Then you've got well-tempered stuff, and there are many, many websites out there you guys can explore where you can have a piece that's played by Bach, and you can hear it in all these different tunings, right? And you can experience that because sometimes if you get beyond 4 sharps. I mean, it's like, whoa, it starts to sound almost like atonal.
It's pretty
'cause
crazy.
You start to move out. So it's a possibility.
Yeah, those tuning systems, I mean, we have to remember, those didn't really, equal temperament. It was what? Like
Industrial Revolution, right,
1800s.
everybody? Industrial Revolution.
Yeah, like
It's just the interchangeability of parts,
Yeah.
right? To create A equals 440, we're not even dealing with A equals 440 with something like that. Who knows whatever the hell the pitch was at that point.
Yep.
It's a good guess.
Fascinating stuff. Does anybody have anything they want to reflect on here? I mean, it's certainly beautiful.
I can play more David Monroe crazy stuff for you later if you want to see him screaming all over the place. I got
pretty wild.
I got a whole consort of rackets if everybody wants to see the rackets. I got that. I've got everything. I'm sorry I don't have any bladder horns. For those of you who remember who bladder horns were, right? Using the bull scrotum. Sorry. You get that one in class. That's enough.
I miss out on this. Okay.
You see the good stuff you guys get by taking me in class?
Oh. Yeah,
Bring it in American music next semester.
There you go.
Yeah, we don't do anything like that in American music.
I know we don't, but I want to see it anyways.
Well, Dr. Telesco, what would you think about showing us some early opera?
Okay, so thank you, Dr. Crain, and hello, everyone. So now from the sacred to the profane.
True.
I'd like to talk a little about castrati and Baroque opera seria, which are operas based on serious, usually classical or mythological themes, and the countertenors who sing these roles today. Now, if you're in Dr. Crane's class, you perhaps have learned about these already. So castrati were the superstars of their day. If you've never seen the movie Farinelli, you should watch it. It's a great movie. He's said to have been one of the greatest singers ever. So young boys with promising soprano or alto voices were often castrated to retain their beautiful high voices into adulthood because they could become really famous. So the castrati's lack of testosterone meant that their bones didn't harden, so they grew unusually long. They were, castrati were tall, they had long limbs, and they had very large rib cages, which gave them incredible lung capacity. So castrati could wow audiences by holding notes for a superhuman amount of time, as well as singing, of course, higher than a naturally matured male voice could, or by singing long phrases without taking a breath. And we can see how long those phrases are when you look at scores that were written for castrati, and you wonder, my goodness, when do they ever take a breath? So I did include a copy of the score on the Google page, I guess, for the second of the 2 arias we're going to hear tonight. Now, today's countertenors are amazing in their own right, as you're going to see. They have both a low range, which of course castrati did not, and an incredibly powerful high range. And they can knock your socks off. If you see them live, you just cannot believe it. Professor Richter can talk to you more specifically about the countertenor voice and the technique and how you develop that. I don't really know about that. So tonight we're going to watch two excerpts from Leonardo Vinci, not Leonardo da Vinci, but the composer Leonardo Vinci's Artaxerxes of 1730, which premiered in Rome. Now, in Catholic Rome, women were banned from singing in church or on the stage, so all female roles were sung by castrati. And additionally, most of the male lead roles in any opera seria were sung by castrati. So in tonight's performance, which features an all-star cast of world-famous countertenors, all the parts are sung by men, as would have been the case in Rome in 1730. So Leonardo Vinci was born in Naples shortly after Bach and Handel. His music had a direct influence on Pergolesi and also Vivaldi and Handel. He died in Naples among rumors that he was poisoned because of an illicit love affair. He composed almost exclusively operas consisting of alternations of recitatives and da capo arias, which you've probably learned about in Dr. Crain's class. And as that was the case for almost any opera seria. So many of you probably already know that recitatives are basically like intoned speech without a lot of accompaniment. The rhythm of the text approximates speech. The dialogue furthers the action of the story. Arias, on the other hand, are more fully accompanied melodies. They have less text, and this allows the singer to emote and to reflect on their feelings and show off their virtuosity. In terms of style, Vinci formed a style that can be regarded as early classicism. His music includes periodic treatment of melody and thematic development. His melodies have a great deal of rhythmic flexibility, which you will see. He wrote simple homophonic accompaniments, not the thick polyphony of Bach. His orchestral parts are generally a 4-part string orchestra with basso continuo, reinforced by oboes, horns, or trumpets. He increasingly used trommel bass or bass tremolo in his music, which is repeated notes in the bass during harmonic stasis to provide some rhythmic animation. He was the first composer of international fame to consistently cultivate this style, so it became associated with him. And finally, I find this very interesting, Artaxerxes was written 3 years before Pergolesi's La Serva Padrona and Bach's B minor Mass. The librettos by Metastasio, and Artaxerxes is considered to be Vinci's masterpiece. Now, a little bit about the plot. These plots are all highly complicated. I'm just going to tell you a bare bones. So Xerxes is the king of Prussia in the 5th century BC. Arbace is the son of his general, and he's in love with the king's daughter, Mandane. Arbace's father has just murdered the king, but he accuses his son, Arbace, of the crime. Thanks, Dad. Arbace asks Mandane to believe he's innocent, but she refuses and angrily declares him her enemy. Arbace laments his fate, but he refuses to betray his father. So what we're going to hear is an aria Mandane sings. It's a rage aria. There's a whole genre of rage and revenge arias, like the Queen of the Night's revenge aria and Mozart's Magic Flute. So she's very conflicted. She loves Arbace. She doesn't want to believe that he could have killed her father, but yet the evidence seems to suggest he did. So she sings in her aria, you know, tell me that you're wicked, that you have a heart of stone, then maybe I'll believe that you killed my father. But oh God, she says, I don't want to hate him, but I want to hate him, but I can't. And so, you know, she's very conflicted in her emotions in this aria. The aria is Dimmi che un empio sei. The countertenor is Max Senchik. He's going to sing a G sharp 5, which is a 12th above middle C. Very high note. The second aria, and this is the real showstopper, Vo solcando. So Arbaci sings of his despondency. However, what strikes me as odd is that it's a very dramatic text, but the music sounds very jaunty. Arbaci sings, I go plowing a cruel sea without sails. The waves tremble, the sky grows dark. Unhappy me, abandoned by all, and so on. But his singing is going to blow you away. This is a da capo aria, A, B, A prime. So the singer would be expected to ornament the return of the A section. But what the countertenor Franco Fagioli does is absolutely incredible. And his cadenza at the end, he sings a C sharp 6. That is 2 octaves and a note above middle C. It's incredible. Now, a final note on the performance. This is the only video that I'm aware of, and I couldn't find any information on the costuming or staging, but it is a bit peculiar. There's a mix of 18th century costuming with some sort of Japanese no or kabuki theater thrown in with the makeup and some of the costumes that you won't see. And I have no idea what the kitty cat ears are on top of Arbaci's wig. So I can't tell you anything about any of the staging or costuming. We're going to start hearing Mandane's Rage aria. And again, this is a man. This is being done just as it would have been done in Rome at the time. A man singing, a castrato singing the part of the woman, and a castrato singing the part of the man. And Jonathan, with that, you can take it away.
All right, here we go. I'll share my screen. Okay, here we go. Here we go. Make sure it's starting in the right place.
That's Mandane right there. That is.
John, Rick, the JR's sound is going through your sound, Dr. Telesco, so it's coming back through for everyone.
Aha.
I think.
Dr. Telesco, are you on mute right now?
Yes.
No, it's on JR's side.
Yeah, it's just something. It's on JR's side.
I wonder if it has something to do with live streaming it to YouTube at the same time.
Okay. Yeah, I was on mute.
Okay.
You're echoing so much.
Let me think about this for a second. Let me stop this share. Let me test out the sound. Yeah, it's when I'm screen sharing, it changes.
If your mic is unmuted and you click the share computer sound when you log into Zoom, I wonder if it'll play stuff from your computer too. You know, like how sometimes people at the beginning of Zoom calls, like you'll hear their email go off. I wonder if you could do the same thing. I mean, we wouldn't be able to see it, which is the downside, but there wouldn't be a delay too.
You just muted your mic while you shared your screen.
I will try that. Hang on a second.
So what I learned this morning from Bill Supa is, all right, let's see.
That's not any better, right?
Jonathan, try this. When you go to, you click the green button that says share screen, and then, you get a window. At the very bottom left, there's two boxes. One says
Yeah,
share
I
computer.
already have those clicked.
Oh,
I think there's something on your like actual computer that has your mic being input in it, because we could hear you when you were still muted when you were sharing your screen. Like mute on Zoom and talk, and we could still hear you.
Let me try this now.
That sounds better.
That's better?
It
On my
sounds
end, at
fine
least.
to me. It sounds fine to me.
Okay.
What you just played it.
It's probably I unplugged my headphones. It was probably my headphones messing with the sound. So I'll just play it from my computer. Okay, let me go back to this here. Sorry for that delay, everybody. Give me a thumbs up if it's okay this time around.
I'm laughing at some of the comments I just read.
That's wild stuff.
He's one of the best countertenors in the world.
I was looking through that cast, and I mean, it's like a who's who
Yeah.
of worldwide countertenors. I mean,
Yeah, Philip
Yeah.
Zbrewski is in it also. He's actually the title role of Artaserzi. I've seen him at the Boston Early Music Festival in one of the operas, and like I said, I would highly recommend when they start performing again, go to the Early Music Festival in Boston. The centerpiece is always at least one early opera. And I mean, they literally just blew me away. Every time I hear them, I just cannot believe what I'm hearing. It's just unbelievable.
So I mean, you all must have stuff to say about that. What have you got? What are you thinking on this?
I'm thinking the most amazing thing I saw is that he was very actively moving among the stage, but you can tell that every time he stopped to sing, he physically planted himself. Even though it didn't look like it, he was using his arms, and there were some people holding on to his hands, but still that powerfully loud with all that support, he needed to like physically plant himself in order to actually successfully do that. And you can notice him doing that too. Like this has been practiced for hours and hours, and it's crazy. That's all I wanted to share.
Mm-hmm.
That man has 2 pairs of lungs.
See, that's the part I don't understand. That's why I said, Professor Richter can talk to you about that, because I don't know the technique for a countertenor. I understand why Castrati had this amazing lung capacity, but and the high range and everything, but countertenors tend to be baritones, and that just blows me away too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's an interesting music. Well, yeah, I mean, like you said, those are like outstanding examples of countertenors, of course, right? There's such a wide range of countertenors out there. There are some that are more alto countertenors, some that are more soprano countertenors. For those of us that know the voice, I mean, it's a technique that is, it's not falsetto, right? Most countertenors will make that distinction very clearly. It's not falsetto, but it's like some, it's this mix area between the male head voice and falsetto, and it's just combining the two. That's how a singer like that gets, the power of of the real voice, as we call it, or the thyroarytenoid TA powered function, TA function versus CA function, which is the cricoarytenoid function. And so it's like this mixed area between them. And when so it has the kind of that floatiness of falsetto in it, but also the power and the volume of TA functionality. So it's really, I can't, Brian, I'm sorry, I can't really teach you much about it because I can't do it. But it's a specific voice type that is pretty fascinating and something worth exploring for anybody that thinks you might have capability in that range.
I like to sing a lot of really high falsetto, and I think of that range like G5 to C6. I usually don't go above C6, but I think of it as my whistle voice.
Mm.
And so if you try to do full falsetto like G5 and up really loud, then it's not going to be comfortable. But you can hear when he goes through, like going up from lower falsetto, it thins out quite a bit with power, but you can hear the texture is just thinning. So I think of it as more like a whistle voice. And some people, if they're trying to find it, they try to like do a puppy cry, like kind of like that. I kind of think that's what they're doing, kind of like falsetto into kind of like a whistle voice range. And it's kind of like similar in a way from like going to chest voice into a more mixed voice in the mask, kind of like that is how I kind of think of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's great. I'm glad you're here because you're right. You can speak directly to it. That's awesome.
For what it's worth, if we were going to be in school last semester, I was actually trying to get a local countertenor to come and perform on the early music concert. So, whenever we're back in school, I'll try again, because I figured everyone would really be pretty amazed at something like that. So we'll hope that, we can do that someday.
One of those questions that we'll never really know the answer to is how is that different from a castrato? Right. It's really neat to have an all male cast, to in some way represent, and it's fascinating from a, if we're looking to give these informed performances, it's fascinating from that angle. It's a really interesting take on historically informed performance, but then this, we have to ask the question, like, how are those voices different? And we don't really have a way of knowing what a castrato really sounded like other than sorry, before everybody logged on, the three of us were talking about these old Moresky recordings. Moresky was like basically I think the last living castrato, is that right? And there are recordings, it's very, very primitive and not very, the recordings don't sound very good. And he was very old at the time. So even based on that, we don't really know what the castrato sounded like. So does this represent that? I don't know.
In the movie,
we can only speculate, really.
Yeah, in the movie Farinelli, and I really do recommend it. It's a great movie. What they did to recreate the voice for the person singing Farinelli is they mixed a countertenor, a famous countertenor, with a famous soprano, and they digitally, mixed the voices together to get both the male and the female quality. So, again, is that more authentic? I really don't know, but it's a great movie all the same.
Nice. Well, unless there are any other reflections or thoughts on that, I was thinking we could move on to something else. I only have a few recordings I'd like to share. One of which, actually, this is maybe a little break for us, if you will. So we have an early music ensemble here, of course, at UML, and we have been operating virtually this semester. It's been a challenge. But we've been putting some recordings together, and Joe is going to introduce us to one, if that's all right.
Hi, folks. I just wanted to give you guys some musical context for one of the pieces we're about to hear, and also hopefully prove to Dr. Crain that I have, in fact, been paying attention in music history. So we're about to hear a piece by a guy called Bartolomeo Tromboncino, who kind of grew up in the middle of the 15th century in like northern Italy and spent most of his life there. The details of his life are kind of hard to pin down, as they are with a lot of people in this time, although from most accounts they were kind of wild. Like most infamously, he like murdered his wife because she had an affair, I guess. And maybe murdered the person that she had an affair with. I don't know, not super clear. But yeah, he was just generally known to like not be a great dude. But more relevantly, he is known for being a prolific composer of a genre called fratellas, or fratella, I think, if we're being technical about the plural of it. For most of you, this is probably a review, but FYI, basically, it was just a secular music genre in 15th century Italy. At the time, there was kind of like a practice of like reciting poetry over like lute or some other kind of instrumental accompaniment. And naturally with that, the poetry would become kind of stylized by the fact that it was being done over music. And that in combination with some of the other musical practices from Europe that were making their way over to Italy, notably the Franco-Netherlands style composition for Those of you know what that is. Just think of Jot Scan. That's like 80% of it. So yeah, in those two things in conjunction basically produce this secular music genre in Italy. As far as how it typically would have been performed, it usually would have been performed by vocalists as like a part song, meaning like we saw earlier, basically one person will pick each voice part, they'd sing it either like that, or one person would sing whatever the topmost voice part was, and the rest will be done with instruments. With that said, that's not exactly what we did. Because it's a secular genre, it wouldn't necessarily have been as blasphemous per se to perform it all instrumentally. And that was more of a common thing to casually perform instrumental music at this time. So that's what we did. I should also probably mention, we did all of this remotely. I know I'm preaching to the choir here, but that does bring along its own set of challenges. But yeah, hopefully that should give you a kind of rough idea of what this sounds like. Did I miss anything?
That's great. Yeah, so here goes. So this is performed with guitars and flute. So here goes. And there you have it. Nice job, everybody. That was it was maybe not something, given the way we performed it and the fact that it was recorded, virtually from all ends of the earth. Maybe not something to include in historically informed performance, but but still, we're engaging with a style, that maybe we wouldn't have otherwise. So. And maybe that's one thing to take from all this, is that like when there should be this spirit of authenticity and desire to do things, to perform music mindfully and think about the way we perform them, and use scholarship and all that, incorporate all that into your performance. But then at the same time, that should never dissuade us from taking on and exploring a style, right? Because, we don't always have access to, shawms and, or anything else, or sometimes we're not even in person, but we still should take the opportunity to explore the styles. Okay, I know we are getting late here. And we try to keep these things to an hour-ish plus. So what I think I'm actually going to do is, unless there are any objections from Dr. Crain or Dr. Telesco, I'd like to skip to the last thing on my list. I hope you all well, some of you may have gotten that spreadsheet that I sent out in the chat earlier. That has links to most of the things we've listened to tonight, along with some scores also. I tried to include those in, or some of them, and then some additional materials. You'll see one there that I was going to present on. This is a piece by William Byrd, and it was a performance by my friend Esteli Gomez. She was, I knew her from when I did my master's, and she's just like this fantastic soprano. I was going to talk about vibrato and how we use vibrato. The short version is that it was thought for a long time that there was like that a lot of the old treatises talk about how we in early music we really shouldn't use vibrato because it compares the voice to organ stops, and a lot of times the treatises talk about using a smooth or an even tone, but there are some there is a movement now towards utilizing a little bit more vibrato, and I think Esteli does this in a really, really nice way, and it's this beautiful piece. And I encourage you to go listen to it. I'm not going to play it here because we're running out of time. But she just does a really fantastic job. And what a lot of modern performers are going towards now is utilizing vibrato as an ornament. Right. It's not, of course, it's not advocating for the bel canto style of like this constant vibrato always happening that you hear in 19th century, 20th century opera, right? Like that's not in the realm, that would be what we consider to be not historically accurate, most likely, right? But instead utilizing vibrato in very specific moments as an ornament to give a note life or to give it, a certain warmth or color. And so a singer would put that on at specific times. And I think she just does that in a really remarkable way. She also happens to be a member of the modern vocal group Roomful of Teeth. I don't know if you've heard of them, but like complete opposite end of the spectrum. So this is a performer who has, has her thumb in a lot of different pies, right? She's in Roomful of Teeth and they're doing like absolute cutting edge stuff with the voice. And then she's also this really accomplished early music singer at the same time. And she does it in a really smart way. And that performance is with four viols, also. So it's just a really neat recording. So go listen to it. The last thing what I do want to play for you is a recording of a regional group. And this was really important that I brought this up when we were drumming up all these ideas. We all, or most of us, if you live regionally, right? If you live in New England, you live in an absolute hotbed of early music, right? If you are able to get into Boston, you can hear, I mean, if you plan your time right and find the right things to go to, you can go hear like truly world-class early music performances. I mean, like I'm not exaggerating that at all. Dr. Telesco mentioned the Boston Early Music Festival, BEMF. I mean, they do fantastic work. And Dr. Crain mentioned Paul Odette, who, I mean, is he music director of BEMF? Or, I mean, I know he's involved with them. I know he performs with them all the time.
If he's not, he was.
He was, right. Yeah. I know he's directly involved. So, I mean, just that organization, amazing, world class. Another one that I wanted to bring up to you, I mean, I come from the vocal music end of things, as you all know. And so this is a group called Blue Heron. I had the chance to study with their director, Scott Metcalf, and he is just like, he's just a walking brain. He's so smart. Can quote like any treatise ever. And one of their most recent projects is performing all of the works of Ockeghem. Okay, Johannes Ockeghem is, of course, I don't have to tell you. I'm sure you go over it in music history. Kind of somebody in like a generation or slightly older than Josquin, right? And just fantastic, and underappreciated, I think,
And blind.
and blind. That's right. Yeah. Just fantastic composer, and there's so much great music there. But great composer, and this is an ensemble, the Blue Heron. You could go hear them once. I mean, once this all ends, once live music starts happening again, you can go hear them, and it's really not hard to do. They perform in Boston and Cambridge. Um, it's just a matter of buying a ticket, and you can go hear literally world class early vocal music. Okay, so I want to play this again. This is Johannes Ockeghem. This is one of his masses, the Missa Maestresse. I'm not very good at French, but it's a parody mass on a song that Ockeghem had written. And so I will pull this up. Sorry, hang on. So let me share my screen so you can see it. This is all, and in accordance with, known scholarship, they're performing this one on a part, which, as many of you likely know, is really difficult. So here goes. Yeah, so I was thinking to just play the Kyrie, but just like I say, this is an ensemble of just fantastic singers and hard singing. A good example of a strong countertenor there. He's more of an alto countertenor, but just a magnificent group. I don't know. Just as a performer, I look at that and I see them looking around the ensemble and like communicating with each other musically. And I'm like, oh my God, I miss that. I can't wait to do that again. It just kills me to see that. But, fantastic group. So like I say, once this is all over and live performance starts up again, you have all this right at your disposal. you could use that example also as a, to listen for their usage of vibrato. I was thinking about that as they were singing also. They're like just at very special moments, just vibrating the voice a tiny bit, and it doesn't take much. Okay, so any thoughts on that, or any thoughts on all this? I mean, there's a lot that we've talked about. Different takes on these traditions. And I guess if there's an overarching theme here, it's just that whenever we're performing anything, not just early music, we do it thoughtfully and with an eye on what was originally done, what the composer originally intended. It's not like putting something on it's not like going to a museum and hearing something, so authentic. It's not about like being dictated to do something. It's just, I loved what you said to Dr. Crain about it being something that points you in a direction. And what was the word that you said?
Possibility.
Possibilities, right. I love that. Just opens up a world of, okay, what can we do with this, right? Any thoughts?
I just wanted to note that I think I had I can't talk. There was a couple other people that agree with me that after listening to the Kyrie and the Pythagorean tuning and then listening to the Ockeghem, it sounded kind of wrong. You know what I mean?
The tuning was not as locked as it would have been, as it was in that. Yeah, you're right.
Was that feeling of like almost there, but not quite, Oh.
Right. Which, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think Ockeghem would have necessarily been performed in Pythagorean tuning, right?
No.
Right.
You're talking by about 1500, then we're mostly in mean tone. Up until 1900, I don't think you guys realized until about 1900 it was mean tone. I mean, that's 400 years of that. So.
Yeah. Yeah, that Pythagorean thing was that would be that's medieval and very, very early Renaissance music.
Yeah. And those groups, that's all they sing in, right? So they don't venture far from that. So their ear is just there all the time. And if you're moving between Pythagorean, mean tone, and equal temperament, your ear gets kind of screwy. That's why when people tell me they've got perfect pitch, it's like, yeah, perfect pitch for what? For equal temperament? Then you have relative pitch. You don't have there's no such thing as perfect pitch.
Right.
There's no such thing. Right? It's just a matter of pitch memory at that point. Because what if you're an A415? It's not out of tune. It's not out of tune. So those are just the things you learn along the way, right? As you go this. I mean, if I can say one thing to all of you who are here, and there are a lot of you still here, most of you live your lives in the last 10 years of music. You live your lives in the last 10 years of music, if that. And what hopefully we've exposed you to here is the past 1,000 years of music, right? And you're at the beginning of your musical journeys. You really are. Some of us are old now. I still feel like I'm at the beginning and I don't know jack. So you have all of this opportunity in your musical lives. And I'm telling you right now, y'all think you're going to be rock stars right now, maybe 30 years down the line. You probably won't be. So at this point in your lives, it's best to just expose yourself to everything out there, right? And early music, like this medieval Renaissance, it's the furthest probably from your musical world. So why not just jump in and see where it takes you?
And there are careers out there in it.
Yes, if you can sing like that countertenor, you guys, or if you can realize a basso continuo line, you can make some serious coin fast. If you can realize like that, you can make a lot of money.
Yep.
And I don't mean like $100 you sing at some church gig. So it's worth it. It's worth it financially and performance to do that.
Amen. Okay. Well, does anybody have anything else to chime in with? There's a lot of people here, so I know it's intimidating. So anyway, wanted to say thanks for everybody for coming out. It's fun, and thank you to Dr. Crain and Dr. Telesco. It's fun putting this together, and hope you all have a great night. All right.
I
Cheers.
have fun.
Tschüss,
care of
bis später. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Danke
See you
schön.
later.
Bitte schön.
Have a nice.